sister, you've been on my mind. Sister, we're two of a kind. Sister,
Hello.
I'm keeping
Every
my
voice tells a
eye
story,
on
and every
you.
story holds power.
I bet
This is Voices Against Violence, a podcast from NGO CSW New York, and I am Pamela Morgan, who, along with Rosa Lazard, serve as co-chair of this substantive NGO committee. In this series, you'll hear the lived experiences of women who've endured, survived, and resisted gender-based violence. Women who are now leading efforts to heal communities, change laws, and reclaim their power. These voices come from every corner of the globe. Their courage transcends borders. Their fight is ours. Grounded in truth, informed by experience, powered by global voices, because silence has never been an option, and change starts with listening. Gender-based violence is not confined to one region, one culture, or one system. It's a global crisis with deeply local consequences. Today we have with us Afghani human rights activist, columnist, and author Nahid Shahalimi, who's going to talk about her work with the acute needs of Afghani women in the health sectors. Nahid is an Afghani-born Canadian author, artist, filmmaker, and founder of We the Women, a Munich-based social impact organization dedicated to inclusive development and lasting social change. We the Women works globally with a strong focus on Afghanistan to amplify the perspectives of women, youth, and marginalized groups through strategic advocacy, action-oriented programming, and narrative work. Residing in Munich with her two daughters, Shahalimi has built an impressive career as a human rights activist, international consultant, speaker, and social entrepreneur. Her passion for justice and art began during her university years, studying fine arts, politics, and Southeast Asian studies with a focus on human rights. For over 2 decades, she has led and contributed to initiatives in Afghanistan and on the international stage through direct on-the-ground work as well as through advocacy, policy, and developmental programming focused on the country. Their portfolio remains a most significant and most sustained body of work. Under her leadership, We the Women implements programs focused on midwifery scholarships, health workforce training, and entrepreneurships in both urban and rural Afghanistan, aiming to promote Afghan women's access to education, livelihoods, and essential care. Its current initiative, Transforming Healthcare Through Women's Economic Empowerment in Afghanistan, launched in 2025 and operates across all 34 provinces. Welcome, Nahid.
Thank you very much, Pam, for having me here. It's wonderful to be here.
Thank you. So we're going to start with first question. And can you tell us how you first became involved in this work? And what are some of the specific challenges women in your community face when confronting gender-based violence?
Sure. Well, when did it start? I think it started when we walked out of the country approximately 40 years ago, or 45 years ago almost, leaving everything behind because of a war. So Afghanistan has been in war for almost 50 years. So a 50-year-old that was born in Afghanistan has only known this, and as we all know, the main victims of such violence and such crises are mostly women and children that pay the price, and that was the case in our family. We left and walked for 5 days and 4 nights over the rugged mountains of Afghanistan to safety with my mother, and I was 11 years old, and my mom was only in her late 30s, in her late 20s, early 30s, and she had 4 little girls, and had to make sure that they found some kind of safe space for them. It wasn't even about education or anything like that. It was about just survival. So coming from a very privileged family in Afghanistan, of course, this was a completely different life that my parents had planned for us. I was born in a 37-room villa. And my father was minister, 7 or 8 times minister of Afghanistan in various ministries under the Shah. And when you have that kind of contrast in life, and then you go through all of it, and I've been working since I was 12 years old, the whole notion of human rights, women's rights, and especially women's rights, because I don't have a brother, and a lot happened not only because of the war, but also because we didn't have a brother. So the attacks, the violence, the threats of kidnapping, the threats of killings inside of Afghanistan before we left, although I was very young, it was very present. And so my mom left because we didn't have a brother, and Sharia law, gives some part of the whatever's left behind by the male head of the household, but not all of it. So there's a lot of that kind of let's just call it pain and tragedy that happened in my early life that shaped who I became afterwards. And Afghanistan always had a special place for me. So I saw also within the society there were lots of inequalities, injustices that was being done on daily basis, and is still being done, that we don't even have, as Afghans, we don't even have time to fix or work on that, because we are trying to survive the wars after wars after wars, and every regime that comes in brings a war with it. The country needed, I saw that it was so obvious for me. So I knew at a very young age that I would go back to Afghanistan one day, and I did. Before the fall of Kabul in 2021, I was there on regular basis, and making the films, and working with women, and finding my own data, basically to find out, okay, there was lots of things that was happening in Afghanistan back then, and there's lots of things that are happening right now as well. Many of these issues are under Chatham House rule, so to speak, even outside of Afghanistan, inside of Afghanistan as well. And Pam, when we had these conversations before we were doing this podcast, there was a lot of reluctancy from my side also, because of the projects that are on the ground, how much exposure is needed for people like us. And it's like a catch-22. From one side, we need people to learn about what's going on. From the other side, if we do, then we also put a lot of people in danger. And especially now that where decree after decree is specifically given towards Afghan women. So Afghan women inside of the country today are not allowed legally to do much, not even walk on the streets without a mahram or a chaperone. A girl is not allowed to go to school after the 6th grade. This is 2025. The only country in the whole entire world that does not allow its women to go to school is Afghanistan. And how many times do we hear Afghanistan these days in the media? I don't hear much. It's only when it is to the benefit of the Western world that we hear something about it. But the challenges, I mean, just that alone should be enough for all of us, all women activists, all feminists around the world, to rise up and say, what are we doing? Why are we normalizing this? So to answer your question, like what kind of challenges we face inside of the country, every single step is a challenge, and we have to kind of pivot and find a way to make sure that the tiny little spaces that we have created or that exists, those tiny little pockets of hope, still stay open. And we go name it. We do all kinds of things in order to make sure that space is conserved or kept at least, and doesn't get worse and worse and worse. Outside, we have lots of issues as well, where we need to prove to the international stakeholders often that what we're saying and what we're doing is actually based on fact, based on data. And there are data that Afghan women experts are collecting from the ground, from daily lives of women, and bring out back to the policymakers, tables, where we tell them that the Afghan women living inside of Afghanistan, this is their wants, and it is no different from what we are fighting for. But again, like we know, it's not only Afghanistan, it's right across the board. There is no single country in the world that has gender equality. So therefore, we as women, I think we have a lot of work to do. So specific challenges, from walking on the streets to going to school, every single step is a challenge when it comes to Afghan women right now. But the voices outside and inside are united, and that is the last. I always call it. It's the last line of combat to a lot of normalization that is happening in the world, and especially the rollbacks of all of these rights that we see not only in Afghanistan but right across the board, all across the world.
When looking at women's health, and how does your midwifery program operate, and how does it offer relief to the women you serve?
The midwifery and the health sector, especially for female health sector, is, I call it a sweet sour spot in Afghanistan at the moment. Because women are not allowed to go in front of a male doctor, in front of a male nurse, because they're not allowed to be in the same room as male health workers, there is a little bit of leniency in that sector. So when it comes to nurses, midwives, they do work, but not all across the board. It depends on which governor is in which area of the country. So if they're a little bit, let's say, tolerant to a certain degree, then they would be able to do their jobs and go to and do the basically the basic needs of a woman when she's pregnant or when she's having a baby. We have tried to stick to the health sector mainly because of this, because we have been able to put midwives, for example, now with one of the latest decrees, even the health sector students are no longer allowed to go to school, but institutions are allowed to have midwives do stage and do their practical work there. So we are trying to find and formulate and construct programs which kind of deviates from the actual learning in a classroom, but rather we deviate it somewhere else, so that we are able to put hundreds of midwives and nurses into programs that they learn, and then eventually also have an exit strategy, which means that they go and they help thousands and thousands of women right across the country, but at the same time they bring in income to their household. So the exit strategy is not only about how many patients they see, but it's also about the economic value of their input as a professional. So there's a lot of flexibility in these programs, and the donors, some donors are flexible, some donors are not flexible. So it also depends on the money that we get, which then equals to all of these programs, and all of these programs equal to midwives, and midwives equal to helping thousands of women right across the country who are having babies. Because one of the highest birth female mortality during birth is in Afghanistan at the moment, and it is so heartbreaking, and it is frustrating at the same time to see how easy it could be solved through programs that actually work. And there are tons of programs that work in the health sector at the moment. So I'm hoping that with our work, we get to kind of push these barriers, not only within the country, that is a huge barrier sowieso, but also with the internationals, so that they become, so that they understand what people are going through. Where banks are closed, we need to find a way to feed the people that are there. We need to find a way to pay the schools in order for them to accept the new midwife that needs to be studying for another 6 months in one of the hospitals, God knows at which province. So all of these obstacles, we have to go through all of these obstacles before we even get to the student, before we even get to the patient. So all of these things are, it just takes, let's just say that it takes a lot of oomph, that I always say, and it takes a lot of patience. And I just pray that we, including myself, don't come to a point where we just can't take it anymore, because it's a lot of pressure, because each decision that we make, each fight that we lose, equals to thousands of people on the ground.
Your work is amazing, and I just pray for your continued ability to serve, because it's inspirational, and at the same time it seems so daunting. So based on your experiences with the health sector and trying to provide services in Afghanistan, do you see any implications for the global community?
Definitely. I think just the fact that the international community is watching, and by watching, I mean, I'm not talking about all of them. There are many people that are trying really to find solutions, and it's not an easy cake to bake. It's the implication of normalization is way bigger. Normalizing a scenario where a sovereign country, does not allow its women to go to school after 6th grade. And before that, even like from the 1st to the 6th grade, is most of them are madrasas, where you definitely do not learn mathematics or history of the world or the arts. But to normalize this scenario is one of the most dangerous things for this world. We didn't fight for over 100 years, or our mothers and grandmothers and great grandmothers didn't fight so that me and you here can do our work today. And then parallel to that, in the same exact lived moment, there is a girl that is fighting to just go and learn ABC, and she's not allowed. I mean, let alone become a doctor, an engineer, and all of the other things that a community needs, women need. So that implication, I think, to look at it that way, is one of that implication is huge. The global rollback of women's rights all across the board in the U.S. and in a young girl that had the young girl of the United States today, in some of the states, does not have the same rights as her mother. And we're talking about, I mean, it's supposed to be the biggest democracy, right? But hold on a second. We're not talking about Afghanistan here. We're talking about the United States. So just the rights to have an abortion, all of these things, the humanitarian blind spots that we don't see, for example. This is also very, very, very it should be very alarming. It's like the policies that are being made based on a group of men with maybe a couple of women on the table, doing these policies and these concepts and these programs for women. That shouldn't be normalized. That should not even be allowed. This is a crime altogether. So whether it's the UN, the EU, the NATO's, all of these organizations that we all work with, I think that there needs to be a certain structural change to truly hold up the 1325s, the WPSs, all of these wonderful things that have been written, these concepts that have been written by women, and they've been designed by women. The architects of these things are women. So therefore, why aren't they on those tables to make these decisions? So these decisions have been made because there haven't been women on these tables. Doha just happened. Taliban had another meeting with the internationals, with US, with everybody, and again the civil society, the Afghan civil society, wasn't present. I think there was one or two, maybe women that are not even on the table, but they're behind the scene. They're in a working group that feeds the people that go and talk to them. Why are we normalizing this? That is not in the hands of call it the Taliban or anybody else. It's in the hands of the so-called democratic states. And we have signed all of these treaties and all of these, acts. So why aren't we acting on it? And this is where the implication of such behavior and such decrees and such ways of life have become the norm, and that shouldn't be. And that is where the danger comes. We even have data from the ground. It's going to be 4 years on August 15th of 2025. And we have data on the ground that the girls that wanted to once go to school no longer want to go to school anymore. They don't want to go to school themselves anymore. The women that didn't wear the hijab, they now wear hijab inside of their home. Although the Sharia does not even, so it is changing. The mindsets of the people are changing. So what will we be faced with in 5 years? I mean, pockets of hope. We will always find pockets of hope because Afghans are survivors. Like I said, 50 years of nonstop war, you become you're no longer a rookie with war. You become very good at finding these little grapevines and finding your way. I'm not saying that's the way it should be, but I know now I know for a fact, I think, that that in my lifetime, I will not be able to see what I want to see in Afghanistan. But what I can see is to make sure that the brick that I have in front of me is made solid enough so that others would put the bricks right beside it and hopefully have a solid bottom that will hold all of these. God knows what else is going to come, and at least we get a few little grains inside of Afghanistan so that they would eventually also come up with ideas, and they grow, and seeds grow into fruition one day. And that is the only hope that I have at the moment through our work.
And hope is so important for us all. And I think that your point on the danger of the global normalization of gender-based violence across the board is well taken. We could probably have a whole semester just focused on that, in every country and every, across all of the artificial barriers that we put up to divide us. But that is a really scary proposition.
Yeah.
So the last question I have for you is a call for action, or a call to action. So what supports do you think that local movements need from the international community? And what really needs to be done to protect women from this scourge of gender-based violence?
I think, now with this, with all of the cuts from USAID and, right across the board, there's lots of cuts when it comes to Afghanistan, and all the new governments that are coming on in power are announcing more cuts. And what we've had in the past, especially in the past few weeks, is I think in June alone, and the IOM just had its a number that just came out. I think we had a working meeting in one of our projects yesterday, and approximately 250,000 plus returnees returned from Iran alone in June. And you're talking about families that lived for decades in Iran, and they're coming back with nothing inside of a country like Afghanistan. Their girls have never seen Afghanistan. Girls as old as 15, 16, 17 have never set foot in Afghanistan. Now they're coming into a country where they're not even allowed to walk on the streets, let alone education. Women are having babies at the border without any kind of help. There's so much needed at the moment, especially humanitarian basic aid that is not getting to them, or if it's getting to them, it's not enough. So yes, first and foremost, it's the resources. Afghanistan needs resources, and it needs to be fed to the women-led networks. There's lots of women-led organizations that are working on the ground, and they work tirelessly day and night, and they are very under-resourced. That's the one thing. Legally and politically, I mean, ICC is already on working on the recognition of gender apartheid, because the UN rapporteur and the UN has already named it gender apartheid in Afghanistan. So that part of the work is really, there's a lot happening in that part of the world, that part of the work, but still the resources and the solidarity especially is needed to stand with the Afghan women, especially that are, again, the last line of combat, to save any kind of dignity that we can possibly save for the people of Afghanistan in general, and especially for Afghan women. And also the safe pathways. For example, there are lots of at-risk women that have been that were basically evacuated, and now they are at risk of being sent back to Afghanistan because Pakistan wants to send all the returnees, Iran wants to send the returnees, and some people in Iran are going willingly because they have the Iranian regime and the Iranian community has been brutal to them in the past decades. And in the name of espionage, in the name of a lot of other things, they are detained. They're not even allowed to go to any school that they want to. They're not allowed to work in the works that they want to. This is in Iran. We're not talking about Afghanistan. So there's a lot of these kind of acute situations that needs a lot of resources. And the resources, as we know, because there's so many other wars around the world, this fatigue, this international fatigue has kicked in. So my call to action is really to support the women-led organizations, women at-risk women, and stand with Afghan women in meaningful, sustained, and resourced ways, and not symbolic ones. So by standing with them doesn't mean that you take the ownership of this whole process away from them. They need to own this process, and they are very well equipped, and they're incredible experts that are still inside of Afghanistan that are working, that we work with. So we need, and they know, and all of the organizations know them. So just give them the resources that they need, and become their solid, sustained, and meaningful support. That's what I call it to action should look like, if you ask me.
Amazing. And, I think that you're really so accurate when you talk about the international fatigue. I think we see it across sectors, and it is alarming, but we have to continue to move forward. We can't give in to a malaise that can be devastating for us all. So thank you, Nahid, for sharing your important insights on the solutions and addressing healthcare needs of women in Afghanistan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Pam.
You're welcome. I always enjoy our talks. I learn so much from you, so it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Welcome. So as we've heard, change begins at the grassroots, but it doesn't end there. From rural towns to the UN halls in New York, the fight against gender-based violence is being driven by people like Nahid Shahalimi with courage, clarity, and conviction. If you want to learn more about her work, please visit wethewoman.com, and I'll spell it out, WE-THE-WOMEN.com. So thank you for joining us on Voices Against Violence, a podcast by NGO CSW New York. If today's story moved you, share it, start a conversation, and stay connected with us at ngocsw.org. Because raising voices is just the beginning. Listening and learning is where change really begins. Goodbye.
I'm keeping my eye on you. I bet you think I don't know nothing but singing the blues. Sister, Have I got news for you? I'm something. I hope you think that you're something too.